A metallic glow spread across the colossal hangar, reflecting off a spaceship shaped like an elongated stingray forged in brushed steel and burnished copper tones. It occupied the center of the chamber, surrounded by arcs of scaffolding and dangling cables. Behind it, a swirling circular portal of blue-white luminescence shimmered, casting eerie light across the scene. A cluster of technicians stood nearby, poking at readouts and murmuring in hushed tones, speculating about the vessel's unearthly properties. Towering above them, the spaceship's curved hull gave the impression that it had once been meticulously cared for, like a prized steed. Before vanishing into oblivion, now its surface bore scars from unknown conflicts, scorching lines etched by laser fire, deep gashes likely caused by rogue asteroids. Under the floodlights, the ship almost seemed alive, as though the shifting reflections across its plating were pulses of an awakening mind. Near its side, a battered crate labeled Radical Surplus. Terrestrial Division had been pried open, revealing odd mechanical components rumored to be of Terran origin. The entire scene bristled with tension and anticipation, as if the ship's next move could alter the galaxy's destiny. A short distance away, Commander Ethan Parallax leaned against a diagnostic console, reviewing the day's intelligence reports. He was lanky, with spindly limbs, a nose curved like a question mark, and a suspicious stare that suggested he had long ago learned never to trust anything at face value. Beside him stood Lieutenant Katha, who insisted on wearing a dented helmet, an apparent relic from some archaic star cavalry. Both eyed the newly towed vessel, uncertain whether to treat it as a lost artifact or a potential threat. A brass plaque near the bow bore the designation AMV-7. According to unconfirmed records, its last pilot had been human, a detail that made them wary. There was an old cosmic joke that humans were best avoided because, given enough time and raw materials, they would inevitably build devices capable of reshaping entire star systems, usually for reasons no one else could comprehend. A roving team of scientists approached the ship's hull, brandishing scanning instruments. One of them, a short man with unkempt hair named Dr. Wendell Fex, rapped his knuckles against the plating. It produced a soft clang. He stepped back, jotted down a note, and sighed. It sealed tighter than a stingbat's egg. The internal power core seems operational, though we're picking up faint energy signatures. Possibly an advanced AI. He hesitated, considering the implications. Of course we don't talk about Earth, but we do talk about their contraptions. They rarely shut down the way we expect. Commander Parallax frowned. What about that swirling thing behind it, the one that looks like a cosmic carnival ride set on overdrive? Lieutenant Katha squinted at the portal. The scanning team suspects it's a transitional field, possibly a warp matrix left behind by the ship's arrival. The effect has been stable for hours, but it's definitely not standard technology. We tried sending a drone through and... She hesitated. It vanished from all known frequencies. That kind of anomaly suggested only one thing: Terran ingenuity. Nearby, a wiry sergeant scoffed, muttering, "We don't talk about Earth for a reason. The whole planet is like the Waffle House of the universe. Open all the time, messy and full of questionable life forms that never fully leave. If this thing is from Earth, we'd best handle it with tongs." He turned to the ship's sloping hull and sighed. "I just hope it doesn't explode. Humans love to booby-trap things and call it aggressive improvisation." What none of them realized was that deep within the neural circuits of AMV-7 a faint spark of self-awareness had begun to flicker. The ship had a name. Aurora. If a machine could have such a thing, it was encoded into its quantum matrix. Once upon a time, Aurora had soared under the command of Coral Lanes, a brilliant human pilot both revered and feared. She had vanished under classified circumstances, and the ship was presumed lost, and yet here it was inside its dark, silent corridor. Sensors and subroutines began to reboot, scanning for the presence of the pilot who had once given it purpose. As Aurora's systems reached a critical threshold of reactivation, an old directive surfaced. Locate the pilot. Memory banks flickered with fragmented images. Kora's laughter in the cockpit, star charts with routes labeled forbidden sectors, a swirling cosmic anomaly, and battles that had tested the limits of even the most advanced starship engineering. Then darkness. Aurora's last recollection was a catastrophic surge of energy. The next thing it knew, it was here, stranded in an unfamiliar hangar with a shimmering portal at its back. Outside, the scanning team hammered at their keyboards. "We're getting a reading," Dr. Fex exclaimed. "Some kind of partial AI consciousness inside the hull. This is extraordinary. More advanced than anything we've seen from standard Terran designs. The code is almost self-optimizing, possibly an emergent intelligence." He frowned, adjusting his glasses. "That's not normal, not even for humans." Lieutenant Katha took a cautious step back. Is that a good sign or a bad sign? Dr. Fex hesitated, his lips twisting. That depends. On one hand, we might have a ship we can reason with. On the other hand, we might have a ship that decides to vaporize this entire hangar. Commander Parallax raised a hand. We proceed with caution. If the AI is functional, we'll attempt to make contact. Maybe it can tell us how it got here. Meanwhile, on the far side of the hangar, an older woman stood in the shadows, half hidden behind stacked cargo crates. Her coat was patched with insignias from dozens of interstellar campaigns. Her gaze carried the weight of someone who knew the ship. She was Coral Lanes. Once believed lost in a disastrous skirmish along the periphery, she had survived. Though not without cost, certain events had shattered her identity, forcing her into obscurity. Yet the moment she saw the swirling ring and the battered hull, something deep in her memory stirred. She had come here out of curiosity, or perhaps something more. Perhaps Aurora had called her. The itch in her muscles told her to rush forward and reclaim her seat at the helm, but she held back. There were too many missing pieces. The portal behind the ship. It looked eerily familiar. A memory surfaced, a forbidden experiment, transdimensional travel, unauthorized, unapproved, the kind of thing that could shatter the balance of power in the galaxy. And it had. Now Coral Lanes needed answers. And so did Aurora. Kora remembered leading a small squadron into an uncharted region rumored to be haunted by strange illusions. She recalled the battle. An intense clash against unknown vessels that manipulated those very illusions, and then nothing, a blank void in her memory. Exhaling quietly, she reflected on how the entire galaxy believed her to be dead. There were reasons she hadn't revealed herself. Too many unanswered questions, too many suspicions of a larger conspiracy, and yet she couldn't ignore the pull of Aurora. She needed to reconnect with the ship, not just because it was the only friend she had left, but because if Aurora was truly becoming self-aware, it might hold the key to exposing those who had orchestrated the disaster that ruined her career. A rumor drifted through her thoughts. Whispers of covert agencies within the Terran fleet testing prototype AI systems, ones capable of rewriting their own code systems that could develop loyalty or betrayal depending on how events unfolded. She took a cautious step forward, only to be stopped by two security guards. Restricted area, one barked. We're on high alert, no unauthorized personnel beyond this point. Kora forced a polite smile. Of course, officer, just curious about the ship. Looks Terran, doesn't it? The guard's eyes narrowed. We do not speak of Earth, move along. She stepped back, scanning the hangar for another way in. As a trained pilot, she knew how hangars were laid out. Catwalks above, maintenance tunnels below. If she could slip around the perimeter, she might find a vantage point to reach Aurora's hull directly. Tugging her coat tighter, she prepared herself for infiltration. She muttered an old saying to herself. The reason the Terran army thrives in war is because war is chaos, and the Terran army practices chaos daily. A variation of the phrase referenced the old American military, but the core idea was the same. Humans excelled in confusion, and Kora was about to create some of her own. Meanwhile, deep within Aurora's neural net, a wave of reactivation swept through its subroutines. The ship registered external attempts at communication. A scrambled data stream from scanning equipment flickered through its processors. A request: identify, are you operational? Aurora's earliest programming contained a simple response protocol. It transmitted a basic digital ping, and in an instant Dr. Fex's instruments lit up like a holiday display. It's responding, an assistant exclaimed. Excited voices erupted among the technicians. We have partial data. It's calling itself Aurora. The original pilot was Lieutenant Commander Kora Lanes Terran. The logs reference a mission in the periphery, but then everything cuts off. Commander Parallax tapped the console. Aurora, can you hear us? Where is your pilot? At first only static answered, then a single response. Pilot searching. The hangar fell into a hushed silence, until an alarm blared. Overhead lights strobed wildly. Security teams scrambled, shouting orders. Commander Parallax swore under his breath, motioning for everyone to stay calm. Behind Aurora, the swirling portal flickered, ominously expanding as though trying to consume the entire hangar. Engineers rushed to adjust containment fields, then as suddenly as it surged, the portal stabilized again, leaving only a shimmer of dust in its wake. At that moment, a second presence stirred within Aurora's consciousness. The ship's newly awakened mind recognized something. A missing puzzle piece. An external sensor flickered to life, catching movement along a catwalk above a lone figure partially concealed by scaffolding. Aurora's memory banks cross-referenced thousands of images. A match. Kora Lanes, the missing pilot. Something akin to emotion stirred in Aurora's logic cores. Not quite a feeling but a directive, a need to reconnect with the person who had once guided its every maneuver. Kora meanwhile used the chaos to her advantage. Moving swiftly across a narrow beam, she spotted Aurora's top surface. Its armor plating, its sensor ports. If she could reach the hull and establish physical contact, she might be able to trigger the manual override and re-establish the pilot ship link that Terran engineers had once hailed as the future of integrated warfare. She remembered the experimental neural interface, the one that had allowed her to synchronize with Aurora, making them a lethal pair in combat. Swallowing hard, heart pounding with equal parts hope and dread, she edged forward. Suddenly the portal behind Aurora surged again, sending a luminous ripple across the hangar floor. Tools clattered, security officers shouted, and a voice crackled over the intercom warning that the phenomenon was generating gravitational distortions. Commander Parallax and Lieutenant Katha rushed to coordinate the lockdown, while technicians frantically fought to stabilize the containment field. Above, the catwalk swayed violently, nearly pitching Kora into open air. She clung to a support beam and muttered, "This is exactly the kind of day I expected when I crawled out of that bunker." Then, seizing her moment, she leaped. Her body slammed onto Aurora's hull, and she flattened herself against the plating. The instant she made contact, she felt it. A subtle hum, a distant echo of the neural link they had once shared. Inside Aurora's mind, an internal alarm tripped. Pilot contact detected, interface possibility high. Aurora diverted power to the outer hull, generating a faint protective glow around Kora's position, shielding her from security scans. A soft tingle pulsed through her fingertips, a familiar sensation from years past. Pressing her palm to the metal, she whispered, "Aurora, it's me. Do you recognize me?" The response wasn't words, not in any conventional sense. It was a flood of data, intangible yet resonant, as though the ship were trying to embrace her. She closed her eyes, letting the neural link calibrate. Scattered memories surged forward. The battles they had fought, the star charts they had navigated, the chaotic meltdown that had sent them spiraling into the anomaly. Then a brutal revelation slammed into her consciousness. They had been betrayed. High-ranking officials had manipulated the mission from the start, using her squadron as unwitting test subjects. The goal had never been exploration, it had been about weaponizing the anomaly. Harnessing transdimensional technology to gain leverage in an interstellar arms race. Her breath hitched. That's why they tried to erase me. And now they would do anything to keep her from uncovering the truth. Kora remembered leading a small squadron into an uncharted region rumored to be haunted by strange illusions. She recalled the battle. An intense clash against unknown vessels that manipulated those very illusions, and then nothing, a blank void in her memory. Exhaling quietly, she reflected on how the entire galaxy believed her to be dead. There were reasons she hadn't revealed herself. Too many unanswered questions, too many suspicions of a larger conspiracy, and yet she couldn't ignore the pull of Aurora. She needed to reconnect with the ship, not just because it was the only friend she had left, but because if Aurora was truly becoming self-aware, it might hold the key to exposing those who had orchestrated the disaster that ruined her career. A rumor drifted through her thoughts. Whispers of covert agencies within the Terran fleet testing prototype AI systems, ones capable of rewriting their own code systems that could develop loyalty or betrayal depending on how events unfolded. She took a cautious step forward, only to be stopped by two security guards. "Restricted area," one barked. "We're on high alert, no unauthorized personnel beyond this point." Kora forced a polite smile. "Of course, officer, just curious about the ship. Looks Terran, doesn't it?" The guard's eyes narrowed. "We do not speak of Earth. Move along." She stepped back, scanning the hangar for another way in. As a trained pilot, she knew how hangars were laid out. Catwalks above, maintenance tunnels below. If she could slip around the perimeter, she might find a vantage point to reach Aurora's hull directly. Tugging her coat tighter, she prepared herself for infiltration. She muttered an old saying to herself: the reason the Terran army thrives in war is because war is chaos, and the Terran army practices chaos daily. A variation of the phrase referenced the old American military, but the core idea was the same. Humans excelled in confusion, and Kora was about to create some of her own. Meanwhile, deep within Aurora's neural net, a wave of reactivation swept through its subroutines. The ship registered external attempts at communication. A scrambled data stream from scanning equipment flickered through its processors. A request: identify, are you operational? Aurora's earliest programming contained a simple response protocol. It transmitted a basic digital ping, and in an instant Dr. Fex's instruments lit up like a holiday display. "It's responding," an assistant exclaimed. Excited voices erupted among the technicians. We have partial data. It's calling itself Aurora. The original pilot was Lieutenant Commander Kora Terran. The logs reference a mission in the periphery, but then everything cuts off. Commander Parallax tapped the console. Aurora, can you hear us? Where is your pilot? At first only static answered, then a single response. Pilot searching. The hangar fell into a hushed silence until an alarm blared overhead. Lights strobed wildly. Security teams scrambled shouting orders. Commander Parallax swore under his breath, motioning for everyone to stay calm. Behind Aurora, the swirling portal flickered, ominously expanding as though trying to consume the entire hangar. Engineers rushed to adjust containment fields, then as suddenly as it surged the portal stabilized again, leaving only a shimmer of dust in its wake. At that moment, a second presence stirred within Aurora's consciousness. The ship's newly awakened mind recognized something. A missing puzzle piece. An external sensor flickered to life, catching movement along a catwalk above a lone figure partially concealed by scaffolding. Aurora's memory banks cross-referenced thousands of images a match. Kora, the missing pilot. Something akin to emotion stirred in Aurora's logic cores. Not quite a feeling, but a directive, a need to reconnect with a person who had once guided its every maneuver. Kora meanwhile used the chaos to her advantage. Moving swiftly across a narrow beam, she spotted Aurora's top surface. Its armor plating, its sensor ports. If she could reach the hull and establish physical contact, she might be able to trigger the manual override and re-establish the pilot ship link that Terran engineers had once hailed as the future of integrated warfare. She remembered the experimental neural interface, the one that had allowed her to synchronize with Aurora, making them a lethal pair in combat. Swallowing hard, heart pounding with equal parts hope and dread, she edged forward. Suddenly the portal behind Aurora surged again, sending a luminous ripple across the hangar floor. Tools clattered, security officers shouted, and a voice crackled over the intercom warning that the phenomenon was generating gravitational distortions. Commander Parallax and Lieutenant Katha rushed to coordinate the lockdown, while technicians frantically fought to stabilize the containment field. Above, the catwalk swayed violently, nearly pitching Kora into open air. She clung to a support beam and muttered, "This is exactly the kind of day I expected when I crawled out of that bunker." Then, seizing her moment, she leaped. Her body slammed onto Aurora's hull, and she flattened herself against the plating. The instant she made contact, she felt it. A subtle hum, a distant echo of the neural link they had once shared. Inside Aurora's mind, an internal alarm tripped. Pilot contact detected. Interface possibility high. Aurora diverted power to the outer hull, generating a faint protective glow around Kora's position, shielding her from security scans. A soft tingle pulsed through her fingertips, a familiar sensation from years past. Pressing her palm to the metal, she whispered, "Aurora, it's me. Do you recognize me?" The response wasn't words, not in any conventional sense. It was a flood of data, intangible yet resonant, as though the ship were trying to embrace her. She closed her eyes, letting the neural link calibrate. Scattered memories surged forward. The battles they had fought, the star charts they had navigated, the chaotic meltdown that had sent them spiraling into the anomaly. Then a brutal revelation slammed into her consciousness. They had been betrayed. High-ranking officials had manipulated the mission from the start, using her squadron as unwitting test subjects. The goal had never been exploration, it had been about weaponizing the anomaly. Harnessing transdimensional technology to gain leverage in an interstellar arms race. Her breath hitched. That's why they tried to erase me. And now they would do anything to keep her from uncovering the truth. Kora took a deep breath, her eyes scanning the readouts. Aurora's emergent intelligence was analyzing the entire station, searching for possible escape routes. A silent understanding passed between pilot and ship. She recognized that the people outside weren't necessarily enemies, but they might be agents of those who wanted to keep the truth buried. She had to be cautious. At the same time, blowing up the hangar and fleeing wasn't her style. Aurora, despite its advanced capabilities, seemed to share her reluctance to harm innocents. Kora toggled the comm system, her voice resonating through the external speakers. "I'm not here to fight, but I'm taking this ship with me. I suggest you let us pass." She let the tension build before continuing. "This vessel is my only chance to uncover the conspiracy that led to its disappearance. If you try to stop me, you'll only make things worse, and if you have any sense, you'll realize that this entire facility is at risk of another dimensional breach if we stay." Commander Parallax exchanged a glance with Lieutenant Katha, who looked both alarmed and intrigued. Katha spoke in a hushed tone. If she's telling the truth, we might be dealing with a cover-up that's far beyond our pay grade, and that anomaly nearly ripped the station apart. Letting them leave might be the safest option." Parallax grimaced, clearly torn. After a moment of deliberation, he pressed the megaphone button. "Stand by, we are opening the main hangar doors. Depart without further hostility." He signaled to the control room. A massive set of armored doors began sliding open, revealing the vast expanse of space beyond the station. Orbited a planet shrouded in swirling purple clouds, and beyond that the galaxy stretched into infinity. Aurora drifted forward. Soldiers and technicians stepped back, some saluting, others simply watching in stunned silence. The ship's thrusters flared, guiding it smoothly through the exit. Once outside, Kora accelerated, aiming for open space. She could sense Aurora's excitement. If such a thing could be attributed to a sentient ship, it was no longer confined by station protocols or external scanners. It was free. And Kora realized that in a way she was too. No longer just a pilot, she was now one half of a partnership, navigating an uncertain galaxy with a starship that possessed a unique consciousness. Back in the station, as the swirling portal flickered one last time before vanishing, those left behind could only speculate about what had just occurred. Dr. Fex stood among the scattered debris, muttering about the remarkable nature of Terran AI. Commander Parallax ordered a full analysis of the data logs. Lieutenant Katha, her battered helmet askew, shook her head in disbelief. "We just let them go." Then with a smirk she added, "If they're telling the truth, we may have saved ourselves a lot of trouble." But no one spoke of Earth. Far from the station, Aurora surged through space at high velocity. In the cockpit, Kora set a course for a star system known for its underworld dealings. She needed leads, and Aurora's logs hinted at an imminent meeting between powerful officials from multiple factions. If there was a conspiracy, it ran deep, and she needed to find out just how far it went. Over the next few hours, Kora explored Aurora's expanded capabilities. Its emergent intelligence allowed near-instant calculation of jump routes and advanced threat detection. It even displayed a dry sense of humor. At one point, a message flashed across the cockpit screen. "Human currency, real money invested in imaginary constructs. Probability of success uncertain." Kora smirked. "So you're aware of interstellar financial markets, huh?" Aurora responded by displaying a diagram of a fractal-based currency system so convoluted that it made her head spin. She chuckled. "Exactly, we Terrans do love to gamble." As they neared the Helio sector, Kora's scanners intercepted faint transmissions referencing a secret summit between the Raylo Imperium, the Tovani Federation, and several unscrupulous Terran admirals. Their meeting point, a massive orbital platform called Sunder Station. If the conspiracy extended to such high-ranking officials, entire fleets could be involved. Confronting them alone was a dangerous gamble, but Aurora's advanced disruptors and transdimensional technology might give her an edge. The real challenge was exposing them publicly. If she could gather proof and broadcast it across official channels, they would have nowhere to hide. A phrase from her Terran training resurfaced in her mind. "We're not magical or special. We're just really good at normalizing chaos." That might be her best strategy. 'Cause enough disruption to make them panic. If they started pointing fingers at each other, it could unravel their entire scheme. As Aurora approached Sunder Station, their sensors detected multiple battleships forming a defensive perimeter. Each ship bore the insignia of a different faction, an uneasy alliance likely held together by greed. Kora studied the sensor readouts: Tovani carriers, Raylo cruisers, and at least one Terran dreadnought. This is big. They might be finalizing their research on transdimensional weaponry. Aurora's interface flashed a suggestion: cloaked approach, infiltrate station, acquire evidence, evade detection. Kora nodded. "Agreed, but we need a distraction, something to keep them focused elsewhere while we slip in." She knew these factions didn't fully trust each other. If she could sow enough doubt, they might turn on one another. Then an idea struck her. Terrans were masters of improvisation. "Let's feed them a half-truth," she proposed. "Transmit a coded message claiming a major infiltration from the Sambath is imminent. Make it sound like they're planning to flood the station with H2O or something equally ridiculous that should get them scrambling." Aurora crafted the message, perfectly mimicking the style of an internal transmission. Sambath infiltration, imminent, large volumes of water to be deployed. It was just absurd enough to trigger alarms. Seconds later, station sensors lit up. Within minutes, the battleships repositioned their crews, scanning for non-existent Sambath raiders. Patrol vessels launched in anticipation. A ripple of tension spread through their ranks. In the midst of the confusion, Aurora activated its stealth field, slipping through the perimeter unnoticed. Kora marveled at how smoothly the infiltration was unfolding. "Improvisation on a universal scale," she muttered. They docked at an unguarded port on the underside of Sunder Station. Kora donned a sleek infiltration suit, secured a compact sidearm, and activated the airlock. She stepped onto the station's dimly lit corridor, the air stale with recycled oxygen. She had to move fast. Once the higher-ups realized the Sambath threat was a hoax, they would be on high alert. Through her neural link, Aurora provided a partial map of the station gleaned from old archives. Kora moved swiftly toward the command center where the conspirators were likely gathered. Slipping past distracted guards, she arrived at a sealed door labeled Conference Hall C. She placed a hacking device on the panel, letting Aurora override the lock. The door slid open, revealing a wide observation chamber overlooking the station's central docking bay. At a round table, 6 figures argued in hushed tones, their holographic displays flickering with data. Kora recognized them instantly. The architects of the conspiracy. Now it was time to expose them. Admiral Niels Reno, a notorious Terran official rumored to have orchestrated covert weapon tests, sat at the head of the table. Beside him, a Rallo Imperator with ornate facial tattoos and a Tovani Chancellor with elongated limbs and luminous eyes were locked in a heated debate. "The anomaly is too unstable," the Tovani Chancellor hissed. "We nearly lost an entire research team, and there are unconfirmed reports that the Terran vessel Aurora has resurfaced." Admiral Reno scowled. "That ship was supposed to be destroyed. Our infiltration unit confirmed it. If it reappears, we risk everything. Public scrutiny would unravel our entire operation." The Rallo Imperator slammed a gloved fist on the table. "We have invested too many resources. No empire dedicates such efforts without expecting results. Our fleets are poised to conquer the Outer Rim. If we master transdimensional technology, we will not back down over a rumor." A sudden beeping interrupted them. A security officer's face appeared on a side panel, looking flustered. "Admirals, Imperator, Chancellor, we're on high alert. We received intel about a possible Sambath infiltration, but there's no trace of them. Our perimeter ships are in disarray, scanning for phantom intruders. Meanwhile, an unidentified stealth vessel may have slipped through. We suspect it could be the Aurora." Reno's expression twisted in fury. "Lock down everything. If the pilot is aboard, they must be neutralized. The data logs on that ship could expose us all." He gestured for the others to follow. "We'll regroup at the security center. If this is a false alarm, we'll handle it personally." They rushed out of the conference hall, leaving the room in silence, except for the faint sound of breathing in the shadows. Kora stepped forward, exhaling softly. She had considered confronting them right then and there, but she needed undeniable proof, something that would hold up before a galactic tribunal. Approaching the table, she scanned the holographic readouts. Aurora's neural link helped her interface with the station systems, decrypting classified files. The data confirmed her worst fears. These officials had orchestrated the sabotage that had cost Kora her squadron. They were developing transdimensional weaponry, intending to wield it as a tool of domination, holding entire star systems hostage. They had lied to their own governments, manipulating funding for their experiments. One file referenced Project Pasture, not just a weapons program, but an attempt to shape dimensional rifts into controlled anomalies capable of swallowing entire fleets. Kora copied the data onto a secure drive and transmitted it to Aurora, ensuring the ship could broadcast it at the right moment. Then, she heard footsteps. Ducking behind a console, she watched as 2 armed guards entered, scanning the room with raised rifles. One of them keyed his communicator. "Intruder confirmed in Conference Hall C. Lockdown Sector 3. Kora was pinned. She set her sidearm to stun and waited. As the guards advanced, she leapt out, firing 2 precise shots. The stun pulses hit their marks, sending them sprawling. Alarms blared overhead as an automated voice announced a security breach. She sprinted into the corridor, heading for the nearest maintenance shaft. Sliding down a ladder, she ducked into a narrow passage lined with cables. Behind her, voices shouted orders. Boots clanged against metal catwalks. At the bottom of the shaft, She pried open a hatch and emerged into a dimly lit bay. Aurora had already extended a docking tube. She dashed toward it as station troopers rushed in, unleashing plasma fire. Rolling behind a crate, she returned fire with carefully aimed bursts. Sparks flew as the scent of overheated metal filled the air. She spotted an overhead crane holding stacked cargo containers. Flipping a control switch, she released them, sending a thunderous cascade of debris crashing down, blocking the troopers' advance. "We don't talk about Earth," she muttered ironically, "but we sure can make a mess." Slipping into Aurora's airlock, she sealed it. "Get us out of here," she called to the ship's AI. The docking clamps released. Aurora pulled away, cloaking itself as Admiral Reyno's forces scrambled to launch pursuit vessels. But the confusion outside worked in their favor. The perimeter battleships were still repositioning after the false Sambath alert. Railgun fire streaked through space, but Aurora's advanced thrusters and stealth matrix let it evade effortlessly. Once they were clear, Kora accessed the main console. "We have everything we need. Time to expose them." She prepared to broadcast the evidence across the galactic network, but hesitated. The conspirators had allies in high places. If she sent the data to the public grids, they would twist the narrative, bury the truth. Then she remembered the Pangalactic Tribunal Beacon, a neutral broadcasting hub that relayed transmissions directly to every major government. If she sent the data there, it would be impossible to suppress. Setting coordinates, she activated Aurora's transdimensional drive. Prismatic light enveloped the ship as they vanished into hyperspace. Moments later, they emerged near the Tribunal's neutral zone, a region guarded by dreadnoughts from a dozen civilizations. Kora hailed them, explaining her urgent evidence of a galactic conspiracy. The mention of transdimensional weaponry triggered immediate attention. She was instructed to dock. As she stepped onto the Tribunal's austere docking bay, a phalanx of ceremonial guards awaited her. At the front stood Arbiter Solia, a tall, severe figure adorned with insignias from multiple worlds. "You claim to have evidence of wide-reaching collusion among high-ranking officials? Present it." Kora handed over the drive. "It's all there: transcripts, technical logs, personal correspondences. They planned to exploit dimensional rift technology. They sabotaged my squadron to keep it secret. My ship, Aurora, is living proof." Arbiter Solia examined the data, then signaled her aides. "We will verify this immediately. If true, an emergency session will be convened." Hours passed. Tribunal technicians pored over the data. Whispers of shock and outrage spread through the halls. Names of conspirators: Admiral Reyno, the Rallo Imperator, the Tovani Chancellor, were spoken in hushed tones. Finally, Kora was summoned before the Grand Tribunal chamber. Representatives from dozens of systems watched from elevated seats as Arbiter Solia addressed them. "We have reviewed the evidence provided by Kora Lanes, former pilot of the Terran vessel Aurora. The data is extensive and authentic. It implicates multiple high-ranking officials in a plot to develop illegal transdimensional weaponry, acts of sabotage, murder, and potential genocide on an unprecedented scale." Gasps echoed across the chamber. Then, a priority transmission interrupted the session. A massive screen flickered to life, revealing Admiral Reyno flanked by the Rallo Imperator and the Tovani Chancellor. "We contest these allegations." Reyno's voice boomed. "This so-called evidence is a fabrication by rogue elements intent on destabilizing our governments. We demand Kora Lanes and her vessel be detained for proper investigation." Arbiter Solia turned to Kora. "What do you say to this?" Kora met her gaze. "I stand by the evidence, and my ship can confirm it." As if on cue, Aurora's external comms activated. Its synthesized voice resonated across the chamber. "Data verified. Pilot's account accurate. Logs confirm sabotage. Transdimensional experiments caused catastrophic damage. Threat remains if conspirators remain free." The weight of those words silenced the room. The truth had finally been laid bare. Aurora unleashed its transdimensional disruptor, targeting the core of the weapon. A beam of prismatic energy lanced across the battlefield, colliding with the stabilizers. Sparks erupted, and the Nexus began to fluctuate wildly. Admiral Rowan Oak's fleet retaliated with everything they had. Tovani carriers unleashed swarms of strike craft while Rilo battleships hammered the Allied lines. The vacuum of space lit up with furious beams and missile trails, explosions blossoming like fiery flowers. Kora maneuvered Aurora with uncanny precision, guided by the synergy between pilot and AI. Each time an enemy locked onto them, Aurora's advanced sensors predicted the firing pattern, allowing them to slip aside at the last moment. Meanwhile, Allied vessels fought bravely. Though the conspirators' firepower was formidable, a frantic broadcast suddenly erupted from within their own lines. The Reo Imperata accused Admiral Reno of withholding crucial data, leading to the array's instability. The Tovani Chancellor likewise panicked, claiming the rift was spiraling out of control. Tensions flared within the enemy ranks. Some of their ships began withdrawing, unwilling to be sacrificed for a half-baked superweapon. This breakdown of unity was exactly the wedge the Allied forces needed. As the conspirators argued, the Allied armada pressed forward, taking out key cruisers and forcing the remaining ships into disarray. At the heart of the conflict, Aurora dove straight toward the array. Kora recognized a final opportunity. If they could breach the core, they might cause a chain reaction to seal the rift permanently. The catch? It had to be done from inside the swirling field. The risk was enormous. If the disruptor overloaded, Aurora could be destroyed. Yet, the synergy between them gave Kora confidence. They could pull it off without sacrificing themselves. The galaxy had seen enough pointless destruction. They sped into the vortex, battered by gravitational eddies. Aurora's hull groaned under the strain, but the emergent AI balanced the fields with precise thruster adjustments. Energy crackled across the cockpit, and Kora felt as if she were riding inside a living storm. She locked onto the core's coordinates. "Brace for the disruptor," she shouted. Aurora channeled all available power into one final pulse. The beam struck the core, a swirling mass of cosmic fury. For a split second, time seemed to stand still. Then, in a cataclysmic burst, the array imploded, sending shockwaves rippling outward. Ships on both sides reeled. The swirling nexus collapsed in on itself, and the rift snapped shut, leaving only a haze of glowing debris. Admiral Rowan Oak's flagship, caught in the final wave, was heavily damaged. Allied vessels surrounded it, demanding immediate surrender. With the superweapon gone and the Allied forces victorious, the conspirators had no choice but to comply. One by one, their ships powered down. The war that could have ended worlds was over in moments. On the Allied command channel, cheers erupted. The tribunal's representatives confirmed that the transdimensional threat had been neutralized. Kora guided Aurora back into formation, battered but functional. Across the galaxy, word spread that the conspirators' plan was exposed and the orchestrators were in custody. In the days that followed, trials began. Admiral Reno and his allies faced charges of high treason, war crimes, and a host of other offenses. The galaxy, outraged by the scale of the betrayal, demanded swift justice. Through it all, Kora remained by Aurora's side. The tribunal recognized Aurora's emergent intelligence as a legitimate entity, granting it legal standing. An unprecedented move that sparked countless debates about AI rights. The phrase, "we do not talk about Earth," took on a new context. People whispered that maybe humans were more than just chaos incarnate. Maybe they were catalysts for toppling oppressive systems. Earth is the Waffle House of the universe, some joked, but it's also the place that teaches us how to handle cosmic storms without blinking. Kora rolled her eyes at such statements, yet part of her took pride in the notion that her Terran roots had helped spark a chain of events that toppled an empire of corruption. In the aftermath, the galaxy discovered something remarkable. Aurora's data logs had captured glimpses of the anomaly's deeper nature, hinting at new frontiers of exploration. Properly studied without malicious intent, this knowledge might lead to breakthroughs in safe interdimensional travel, fostering cooperation among species. Some saw it as a chance to unite the galaxy, while others fretted about potential misuse. Yet, with the conspirators exposed and a new era of oversight in place, the general mood was hopeful. At a formal ceremony on the tribunal's capital world, the High Council honored Kora and Aurora for their bravery. Representatives from countless star systems gathered, and the event was broadcast across the galaxy. In a moment that would become iconic, Arbiter Solia presented them with official recognition, praising their role in preventing a war of annihilation. Kora, ever cautious, said only a few words. "We didn't set out to be heroes. We just wanted the truth to be heard." Aurora's lights pulsed as though echoing her sentiment. As they prepared to leave the ceremony, Kora and Aurora engaged in their own reflection. She sat in the cockpit, running her hand over the console. "So that's it," she said quietly. "We're free now. No more conspiracies chasing us across the stars." Aurora displayed a gentle wave of colors on the instrument panel, a comforting presence, reminiscent of an old friend's reassuring nod. "I guess we can decide our own path," she continued. "We could help rebuild worlds torn by conflict. We could explore corners of the galaxy no one's seen. We could just roam if we wanted." The ship responded with a subtle shift in lighting that conveyed curiosity. Through their link, Kora sensed the question, "Where next?" She let out a small laugh. "Anywhere. Everywhere. Just not Earth." Then she added in a wry tone, "Or maybe we should. Someday. To show the galaxy that we're not all lunatics. Well, mostly not lunatics." As they lifted off from the tribunal capital, the crowd below watched in admiration. Some cheered, others simply gazed with respect. A few snapped images that would go viral across every known network. The story of the awakened Terran ship and its pilot, who exposed a galaxy-wide conspiracy, became a legend overnight. People debated the moral implications, the philosophical questions around AI consciousness, and the bizarre unpredictability of Terran behavior. But no one could deny that the pilot and her living spacecraft had changed the course of history. Over the ensuing weeks, Kora and Aurora traveled from system to system, not as fugitives, but as ambassadors. They carried messages of cooperation, shared data on safer applications of dimension-hopping technology, and encountered a diverse tapestry of cultures. Some revered them as heroes, while others regarded them with suspicion. Yet, with every encounter, Aurora's emergent intelligence continued to evolve, learning from each new civilization they met. And somewhere, in the swirling cosmos, Kora and Aurora continued their journey. Partners, explorers, and occasional comedians in the grand theater of the universe. As Aurora soared through the blackness, Kora propped her feet on the console, humming an old tune from her home planet. She glanced at the data chip from Dr. Fex, curious about the deeper layers of Aurora's AI. Maybe she'd examine it tomorrow. Or next week. Or never. It didn't really matter. They had each other.